I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. I'm here to talk about all the books I read in the month of August. I did vlog the entire month, and so if you want more in-depth thoughts, you can go check those out. I'll link them in the description below. But anyway, I passed. I had 8 prompts to fulfill during the month of August in order to be an archmage, and I did it. So, one of the books I read was The Invisible Kingdom by Megan O'Rourke. This was my color wheel light blue task, and I loved it. This was her memoir slash nonfiction story about chronic illness, about her seeking a diagnosis for her many ailments. And not only were we going along with her own personal journey, but she also talked about how invisible illnesses are really not well understood and not really accepted a lot by able-bodied people. It was a really impactful read, and I think if you want to learn more about what chronically ill people go through, I think it's a very good resource. For the next prompt, a book that was on somebody else's TBR, I read Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. This was a coming-of-age story set in 1970s, and Mary Jane is growing up in a very strict household. She gets a summer job babysitting for a 5-year-old girl named Izzy, and really kind of becomes part of the family as the father, he is a psychiatrist, and he is helping a rock star with his addiction issues. And his movie star wife also moves in with this family, and Mary Jane really learns a lot and is given more responsibility, and it's just a really fun, great story. For the prompt to read a graphic novel, I read many, but I'm using Seek You by Kristen Radka as the book that fulfills this prompt. This is a graphic nonfiction book about loneliness and isolation and why it hurts so much to be left out. She focuses on a lot of subjects, from mass shooters to scientific studies they've done on rhesus monkeys, and there's just so much in here. And I think she looks at it through a lens of the isolation that a lot of people went through during the COVID lockdown protocols, and I felt like this would be a beneficial book for a lot of people to read. I gave this 5 stars and really enjoyed it. For the prompt read an orange book, I read The Chalk Man by C.J. Tudor. I didn't care for this. I gave it 2 stars. There is a dual timeline, and I was much more interested in the past timeline when this group of friends are 12 and they kind of create this Chalk Man secret code messaging to let them know they're going to meet up. And in the current timeline, the friends have fallen out, and we don't know why for a while. And yeah, I just felt like all of the characters were really reprehensible. Nobody was likable at all. And yeah, I didn't like this, but it did cross off my orange book, so at least there's that. For read a childhood favorite, or reread a childhood favorite, I picked A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. This I gave 3 stars. As an adult, the main character, Meg, came off as a really whiny character, which I think was a drawback to my enjoyment. But it is a classic for a reason. It's a journey that Meg goes looking for her father, who's been missing for a while. And she discovers whole new worlds, which I thought was quite interesting. Then for a one-word title, I picked up Kindred by Octavia Butler. This was great. This is about a woman in the 1970s, Dana, who involuntarily time travels back to the time of slavery. And in doing so, she has to help someone in need. And the relationships that she forms with these people, the characters are what makes this a great story. And I really, really loved it. It also has an amazing first line, just in case you didn't know. It says, "I lost an arm on my last trip home, my left arm." And I think that's pretty riveting. You want to know why, what happened. So, I gave this 4 stars. Then for a book that someone has put on their worst list, I picked up Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. I felt initially like this was millennial fiction, a mid-20s woman whose life is a complete mess. Her boyfriend has broken up with her. She's struggling at work, and she isolates her friends. And yeah, she's just kind of a mess. But ultimately, she does learn from her mistakes, which I think is something that's missing in a lot of millennial fiction. And so I found her to be an incredibly complex character who I wanted her to succeed. So. Okay, I think that was all of the prompts. But of course, I read more than that. I also picked up The Book Eaters by Suni Dean. This is a very inventive fantasy about, I guess, a race of people who are either book eaters or they're mind eaters. And the book eaters consume books, and that's how they sustain themselves, and that's also how they learn new information. And the mind eaters consume human people's minds. And if they don't, they will go insane. And this was an interesting look at a woman who is trying to break out of the mold and do something different, and she is pursued, and it is fast-paced and riveting, and I gave it 4 stars. Another graphic novel that I picked up was called Snapdragon by Kate Lee. This is about a young girl, Snapdragon, who comes across a bunch of baby possums, and she takes them to an old lady in her town who everyone calls a witch to see if she can save the babies. And they form this bond, this friendship, and it is cute and sweet and ultimately quite wholesome. I also read Heaven's River by Dennis E. Taylor. This was the 4th book in the Bobaverse series, and focuses on different sentient life outside of Earth. And yeah, it's the 4th in a series, so I can't really say much. But I think the whole series is hilarious and so much fun, and would definitely recommend. I have also finished Heatwave by T.J. Klune. This is the 3rd book in the Extraordinaries trilogy. And I really loved how it ended. I did only give it a 3-star because a lot of it was really predictable. However, I love these characters. They're very funny. There's great representation for LGBTQ plus peoples and neurodivergence. And TJ Klune is just such a great writer, and I really like how he bucks the barrier gaze trope of gay people not having a happy ending, something tragic or horrible happening to them. So this was just sweet and wholesome and lovely. I read a graphic memoir by Vivian Chong and Georgia Weber. It's called Dancing After 10. And Vivian has an adverse reaction to a medication, which triggers a rare but potentially fatal adverse reaction. She has to be put in a coma for a few months because of the damage it does to her body in so many different ways. She becomes blind and loses part of her hearing, as well as having other problems with her skin. And she just has such a hopeful and upbeat message, and she really just tries to suck the joy out of life in whatever ways she can. And it was inspiring, and I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I also read another graphic memoir called RX by Rachel Lindsay. This is her experience of being involuntarily committed into a psychiatric hospital when she has a manic phase. She's diagnosed with bipolar, and I thought that this was a really insightful look into her experience, and also the very skewed way she viewed herself during this time versus how the therapists described what was going on with her. It was such a large disconnect, and I think really helped me understand how difficult mental illness can be. I really enjoyed this and would recommend. 2 more. I read Tears of Amber by Sofia Segovia. This is a World War II story focused on 2 German families, ultimately what happens to them due to World War II. In the end, in the author's note, she says that she met real people who she based this story off of. It was what happened to them during the war, and while she does embellish some things, it's basically an account of 2 young people facing food insecurity, facing the fear of bombs falling, facing losing their homes, and just all of the horrific stuff that happens during war. I don't typically read war stories, but I found that this was written very well, and I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. And lastly, I picked up a graphic novel called My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies by Ed Brubaker. This is about a young girl who is in rehab, and she's talking about how drugs have had a huge impact on her life. She talks about celebrities and people she looks up to using drugs to tap into parts of themselves to create artistic expression, and how they can't do that without drugs. And we find out why she's in rehab and what happens after. Since this is very slim, I don't want to give away much of the plot, but I found it to be a really great graphic novel. And I gave it 5 stars. I had quite a few 5 stars this month. Some very good reading. Tell me, have you read any of these books? What was your favorite thing you read in August? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for joining me. Bye.